So, Will, thanks for joining here today. I know you're really busy with your new job, and I get the sense from our earlier discussion things are going well there, and you're a popular guy in the new organization. So, I especially wanted to today discuss digital labor. And as you know, all you have to do is see my LinkedIn profile, and you'll know that digital labor is kind of my mantra. It is, as I see it, is the most exciting kind of subsegment in this space. So I'll tell you why I'm excited about it, Will, and tell me what you think, right? See where we agree, or maybe where we don't agree, right? So if I think about when I first started the Institute for Robotic Process Automation and AI, the bulk of the discussions were primarily around, I would say, basic textbook automation of tasks. And that was and still continues to be very attractive to many people. However, when I thought about, I think about discussions I've had in recent years about with people that were a bit underwhelmed with the ROI, you dig a little deeper, you scratch the surface, and you see that there's only so much productivity that you can get by automating a task, or maybe providing some productivity for a knowledge worker, whereby maybe you're helping them with 10 or 20% of their workday or work week, right? So there's some benefits there, but not as impactful as I saw it as is intelligent and adaptive automation to a full end-to-end process. And so that was the breakthrough for me maybe 6, 7 years ago, where I'm saying I think this is the game changer. So I think it's less about basic automation of a task. I think when you get into intelligent automation of a process and this concept of digital labor, you start to envision or maybe re-envision how work gets done, how organizations or enterprises are organized, and in my opinion, ultimately what digital transformation is all about. Because if you impact labor and you impact how work gets done, that is as transformative as anything else. So what do you think? Am I overhyping this, or what do you like about that, and what would you challenge, Will?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important observation. A number of people in our industry, of course, now saying it a lot, but you've been discussing this for quite some time. And if I think through where the origins of this are, and just talk about digital transformation for a minute, park automation in its purest form, just talk about the move from analog mediums to digital mediums and how that impacts the way we work. So take the industry that I'm in investor services, for instance, and certainly since COVID in March last year, the way we're interacting with our customers has changed pretty remarkably. It's still very high touch, but of course, a lot of offices are closed. We have more restrictions, and we're moving away from paper forms and wet ink and physical meetings into just doing things on an iPad. And that creates the requirement for change, and it's been going on for a lot longer than COVID. It just accelerated in the last year. That requires a significant amount of change in moving analog work, whether that's a meeting, whether it's taking notes, whether it's sending a letter, into digital work. And that, the whole concept of digital transformation, many people are very, very familiar with that. However, what you subsequently create, in my opinion, if you have a lot of digital work, is do you still need or want your people who are competent thinking machines doing humdrum tasks? And all of a sudden, is it sensible to have people doing digital work, or do we need to have the advent of this digital labor that sweeps up everything in the background, that has no analog input, has currently a certain level of decision making, but we, broadly speaking, have to be able to talk about the business rules? Yes, I get there's competencies out there that are really advanced, but I mean genuinely being adopted at the moment. And it makes me think about when I'm looking at an organization like mine, or previously when I was a consultant helping other organizations, is how does the world look different if we enter into the design phase of building our businesses conscious of the existence of digital labor, able to execute digital work? And how would I structure my company differently? And how would I deliver my services to my clients differently? So this whole area really excites me. I think some of the people who are doing it very well don't even know they're doing it. I think a lot of the fintechs and that.
But you touch on you alluded to definitions, And if you type digital labor into Google, you'll see a handful of things come up. Most of what I see does not meet the definition as I see it. It seems to be just a term bandied about. Maybe it's a cool term, but it's mostly, in all the cases I've seen, referring to people working remotely with technology. And that's what I've seen. And where I see the impact, Will, is a scenario where there's no knowledge worker. The software is handling that work from beginning to middle to end. And I see that the discussions I'm having with forward-thinking organizations are less about more software, right? So meaning challenging the concept that hyper-automation is just bolting on more software. And it's more about less people in non-core areas, right? So if you are in the consumer product goods space, how do you justify spending several $1,000,000 a year on IT service desk, right? It's non-core. So I'm not anti-job. It's just a matter of where do you invest your money? The majority of the jobs, as I see it, should be in the core practice, right? In the core business, in your core area of focus. So my day-to-day discussions, whether they be endpoint management under the subheading of digital workplace and or RPA monitoring and management, are scenarios where these companies do not see either of these processes core, but yet they're labor intensive, and the outcome is suboptimal, right? So anything that shows up that looks like it's a breakthrough is attractive. I'm curious, with if I think back of your experience in the advisory days, are you seeing kind of similar scenarios where people are looking beyond the next tool to kind of bolt on to the last couple of tools that they already bought? Do you see a desire for labor alternatives or alternative ways for work to get done, or am I too far out there, Will?
No, I think it's definitely a conversation that was had a lot, and there are a handful of organizations that have really started looking at this. But for the best will in the world, the majority of organizations I ever spoke to in my advisory days across the multiple organizations I worked with would have a really good academic conversation about this. And when it came time to put pen to paper or sign a check, it was quite often down to, okay, actually, can we go back to this FTE business case, this hours back to the business? And I've long spoken, first used this term, I'll say again in a minute, when I was working at Symphony, and I really took the idea and tried to develop it when I moved over to ISG, but I started speaking to people about automation by design. And we went through this period of talking about thing by design, security by design, safety by design, right? And I just had one morning, just woke up and thought, well, what if I went automation by design? What if I designed an organization knowing that I could automate away a bunch of work? How would that look different to an organization that I turn up to with a bunch of tools and try to retrospectively automate? And I think anybody in this space who does that thought experiment will come out with wildly different designs of their businesses. And what I sort of think my job, my purpose in the world was then as a consultant was to get to people to think about what the art of the possible is if they were given a clean sheet of paper, how they want to deliver experiences to their end customers, how they want to give rich, fruitful careers to their staff, give them really good progression opportunities, and how would they design the organization to achieve these things, putting either the employee or the customer at the center, dependent on your particular thoughts as to who your organizations should revolve around. And I bet the design is very different if you never had to think about doing humdrum repetitive work, let alone some of the more advanced things that these tools are capable of now. And that concept to me encapsulates digital labor. That's how it's different to automation or to RPA or to OCR, or whatever it may be.
No, it makes sense. And in your discussions with these, let's say, in your consulting days, what portion of the clients were looking for cost reduction versus other, let's say, business drivers? Let me allow me to ask that question a different way. I'm sorry. What
Sure.
everybody likes to save money, right? So what percentage of the scenarios was cost reduction, labor cost, or any other cost reduction, the driving force versus that not being the driving force, but a nice to have? How would you describe that mix?
I think that mix changed quite a bit through the course of time over the last 3 or 4 years. I think the initial adoption, the RPA in particular, was very much seen as the next world of outsourcing of labor arbitrage. Instead of arbitraging to a lower cost region, you put it on a server as to whether that may be, and that's how you'll see a cost reduction. And we see that in the way Blue Prism first marketed, how UiPath's original marketing looked before they moved to the a robot for every person. And similarly with a lot of the use cases AA were putting out there, to pick the big three, if you will. Look at how their marketing is today. It doesn't reference cost reduction until you go really deep into the marketing material. Now, I think there are two reasons for that. I think they've wised up to this. It's not just executives they're selling this to. If the general populace sees this as the robots taking our jobs, that's a tidal wave to go and fight. So it is partially a PR activity, but also in reality, the cost of hiring, the cost of redundancy, the cost of workforce management and change, when you include that into a business case, really outweighs these FTE business cases that we see. I've long referred to them as lazy man's business case. I've written quite a bit about the challenges of what happens if you just pursue an hours back to the business way of looking at this. Should it be completely ignored? No, not at all. It is a lever that gets impacted. But to answer your question directly, when I first started, 70+% of people would be saying, I want to reduce the cost of finance, I want to reduce the cost of IT, I want to reduce the cost of HR. Now there's still 25-30%, because quite a lot of the world haven't adopted these technologies, even in their most basic sense, really. But the majority of conversations now are, how do I enable top line growth, or how can I enable a competitive advantage against my competitive industry? So it is moving, like I said, so it's probably 70% of the conversation now.
No, makes sense. You touched on an interesting point. I think there are many in this space that are avoiding kind of that third rail of let's say job killer, right? So and the unfortunate part there though is that then they maybe in their messaging they soften the messaging around impact. And and by the way, I'm for everybody having a great job. Where I've come to a comfort zone there is it's less about less jobs. It's more about the jobs being in the core area. So and again, why divert money? Why dilute focus on if you are Ferrari, right, or you're Louis Vuitton, or your Apple computer? What should your focus be, and how do you justify spending money, certainly around labor and related, in non-core areas? So the majority of my discussions is very interesting. So starting back in the early 90s with the Outsourcing Institute, there was a lot of discussions back then around core and non-core. There was a piece published, I want to say it might have been 1995 or so, from Sloan Management Review. And the thinking then was, focus on your core business and then consider outsourcing, non-core activities. So it's interesting how some of that thinking is coming back around, but less about offshore and more about what I call no shore, right? Mm-hmm. So having experienced firsthand that transition from onshore to no shore, which was really kind of promised as better, faster, cheaper, it ended up just being cheaper. Wasn't always, in my opinion, my experience, better or faster. Here we are now in this shift from offshore to no shore, i.e. digital labor. And what has me really passionate about this space, Will, is that it really is better, faster, cheaper. And if I think about even just from the standpoint of IT service desk, when you take human out of the loop and it's machine to machine, I'm having these discussions every day with existing or prospective prospects, if you will. You can't be any faster than machine to machine, right? As opposed to maybe some more traditional software where it may spot an issue and then forward it to a help desk engineer, mm-hmm. right? Our software spots it and fixes it, right? Autonomous. So you go end to end and you think of those benefits in other areas, wherever they may be, HR or claims processing or back office finance. And it's not, you can't pull this off today with every process, but there are many that you can. I only focus on two. But I see the benefits there. Think of end user satisfaction or customer, if you're a service, customer satisfaction. If you're resolving issues in many cases before the customer even finds it, right? Now, here's an interesting phenomenon that maybe you're seeing as well. We're seeing this on the on bot management and repair. We're seeing many companies now where they don't have a dedicated team doing bot management. If they do, the complaint is this is expensive as all heck, and there has to be a better way. What more often than not they're doing is what I call kind of musical chairs. So if a bot breaks or there's an issue, they'll grab one of the bot developers and they'll drag them over and have them find the bot and fix the bot and reinstall it. So you have this scenario where it's kind of counterproductive. So so the more you're fixing bots, the less you're developing, and none of these developers want to be doing that maintenance. That's not what they signed up for. So then you get a scenario where fully digital end to end, our bots fix your bots. It's it's resonating is the word I'm looking for. It's resonating, and there are easily another couple of dozen scenarios. I'm curious, in areas that you have discussed, and maybe even some things that you are working on now or know of with colleagues of yours in the industry. Are there other use cases that you like? You see as like strong prospects for kind of an intelligent, adaptive end-to-end play?
Yeah, so yes, a couple of things I want to answer there. Split into a second. Firstly, and it finishes with coming back to the question about what can we use bots, repairing bots, etc. It starts with sometimes the right answer isn't even the bot, and this is the digital labor piece. So take the example about customer service. If we can use an intelligent bot that's either snooping on a conversation, helping the agent with what they should say next, or it's running off finding things in the background in order to keep better flow of the conversation, or it's doing something else in the contact center supporting. Quite often we focus our business case so much on how can we improve this call? How can we improve the customer's experience when they phone my contact center? I'd be so bold to say as why is the customer phoning the contact center?
Right.
Where do we apply predictive analytics earlier in the value stream to say there is going to be an issue, and to your point, we can interject then, negating the need to contact the center anyway. I was speaking with my old partner in crime, Wayne Butterfield from RSG a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing the idea that the world's best customer service is no customer service, because strictly speaking, when's the last time you phoned up a contact center to say thank you very much? You typically phone them up to say I've got an issue. So that's the first piece. They're just not necessarily looking at automating the symptom, but really finding the problem and applying the technology there. That sort of leads me into that piece about robots helping robots. We talk about automating the automation. That's the next place I see a real opportunity. We went through the late 90s, 2000s through one-touch provisioning of virtualized infrastructure. And there'll be a lot of people who listen to this who give a laugh at never really achieving that nirvana, but the concept was there. And if we look at single touch provisioning or no touch provisioning of robots, I don't think is too far in the horizon. If we can find, using process mining technologies or some other form of identifying processes, it could be an analyst or whatever it may be, that we're not far off robots being able to build themselves well. We saw this technology demoed to a very high competency, I think back in 2015 or 2016 with Viv.ai that Samsung suddenly bought and to my understanding just shelved. But it wrote its own code based upon questions that a user would pose to it. If there are people out there who can do something as advanced as that, and there will be people out there who know a lot more about natural language generation than I do, I can't see how we can be far away from applying these technologies to base RPA and just single touch provisioning automation for our entire repetitive suite of business processes, typically in the back and middle office, a little bit further away for the front office, I think.
Makes sense. So what is your parting advice to those out there, the thousands that have initiated this journey? They're doing, I would say, again, basic textbook RPA.
Mhm.
And they're looking to step up, to the next level. They're looking for more impact. They're looking for more power, and ultimately looking for a greater ROI. What's your advice to them as to kind of what that next step or next few steps be?
Brilliant. So firstly, data is your friend. It's really important to have good master data management. And that doesn't mean all the data needs to be clean and rank and file and neat. There are tools and capabilities out there that help you interrogate dirty data or data that needs some form of sifting. But data is your friend, not your enemy. And the more of it you can have, and the more of it you can ingest and understand, the better position you'll be in to impact real business KPIs. The second piece will be stop measuring how many robots you have. Yeah, you're interested, and procurement certainly will be interested because there's a direct correlation to how much money you have to give the vendors. But stop measuring how many robots you have, or how many processes you have, or how many hours you've provided back to the business, and tie the automation KPIs to business outcomes. So look at how automation has driven a top line increase or has a direct correlation to a bottom line reduction. It is so common, certainly when I was in the advisory world, to speak to an automation COE lead who says, look, I have the most fancy automation COE ever. It's centralized. We've got hundreds of robots running. We've got really slick processes for getting them spun up, supporting them and retiring them. We're saving tens of thousands of hours a year. You're like, wow, good work, good work. You go and speak to the CFO and you go, but we're not doing any more work. Our labor mix has not changed. And I'm also spending 2.5 million a year on this automation project. I can't see where the benefit is. So data is your friend, and focus on tangible, real benefits, not the theoretical benefit of hours back to the business. Measure what's really being impacted.
Awesome. Will, thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's always good to chat, Frank.